Okay, we are live yet again, and today we are going to unbox and review, let me get my thing going here, the new MacBook Air with the M2 on board. And we have plenty of data from the M1 that I reviewed previously, so this will be kind of fun to run some tests on it, see how it performs. And let me just get set up here, and we'll get going. All right, I have my water here. My allergies are killing me today. It's funny, I was in Florida where it was like humid and muggy, and like exactly where Kevin Hawthorne is from. And I was like so much less sneezy than I am now. So yeah, let me get it out of the outer box here, and then we will do the unboxing, and I'll probably record the unboxing part. William Wilkinson is here, Romerick is here, and Christopher Dale is here too, along with Nigel Roberts. All the usual suspects are creeping in here, which is good. And one thing about Apple is that their internal packaging is reusable, but the box that they ship stuff in is not, because you have to tear it open. It is all recyclable, but I'm on team reuse. So I have never had to buy shipping supplies for my little fledgling business here because I get so much stuff in that I reuse. Mohammed is here. It is 2 a.m. where you are. Where are you located? I forgot. And Tristan Leonard is here as well. So hopefully I'm not keeping you up, Mohammed. It is about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, so I'm like 12 hours the opposite of you. And I think where Nigel is in the UK, it is, what, about 8 p.m.? Something like that. All right. Yeah, so we're going to do a little unboxing video, I think. Let me just see where my camera 2 shot is looking like right here. So I'm going to set the laptop up. So what I'll do is I'll move my current one in the place here, just so I can see where I need to get the camera adjusted for the inevitable unboxing. So I like to shoot these things as one take. My screen needs to be cleaned for sure. Okay, there we go. All right, that'll work. All right, there we go. Tristan is also on team reuse. Yeah, I'm a big fan of reuse. Reusing is as important as recycling. And in many cases, you can be assured that you're going to not have to create more if you reuse because you know you're reusing it, right? Like when I put stuff in the recycling bin, I have no idea if it gets recycled. I assume that it is. New Mexico is here from Privateer. All right, so let's take the plastic off, and we will shoot my little unboxing video. All right. Yeah, it's only Saturday, but I'm trying to get caught up. All this traveling that I did totally messed up my schedule, so I am so far behind right now. It's crazy. All right. So let me get started here. Garlic bread face is here. Tell you, you're covering the full gamut of tasty foods. I once knew you as meat face, but you have shifted to the grain products. Garlic bread face is on my Amazon chat. All right, and I'm going to do a review of this, and actually this is going to be a twofer out of this one because we're going to, well, threefer. We're going to have an unboxing video for the extras channel. People love watching people take Apple products out of boxes, which is why I'm doing that. And, oh, is the typo in the stream title? What did I do in the stream? Testing the, yeah, I did screw that up, didn't I? Let me fix that. Let's fix that. All right, future people will see the right title. But people like to watch people unbox Apple products. Partly because like the packaging is so nice on these things. All right, so I'm going to record an unboxing video, and we'll take it from there. Hey, Robert is here from Hawaii. Aloha, 8 a.m. I love Hawaii. I can't tell you how much I love Hawaii. I haven't been there in a while. My wife and I went, we did 4 different trips. Actually, 5, no. We went to Hawaii 5 times? Yes, we went 5 times. So we did 4 trips. We went to the big islands. So we went to the Big Island, Maui, Kauai, and what's the other one? We did them all. Kauai, Maui, Oahu, and the Big Island. And then we went back. I had a business trip for my old job, but we went back to Maui. Actually, yeah, so that was the 4. And then the 5th one, my wife's friend got married in Maui, so we went back to Maui again. So it was a lot of fun. And we'll be going back there soon at some point. Air 10 is here. Hello there. All right, so let's get the show on the road here. I'm going to be sneezing a bit because the fall allergies are killing me here in Connecticut. I don't know if you get fall allergies in Scotland, but I can tell you I am like sneezing constantly. So, and I've been sneezing all summer. It's been like awful here. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for another unboxing. I just got in my M2 MacBook Air finally. This is the 8 CPU and 10 GPU version with 16 gigs of RAM. So I did a little bit more on the system config to help with some of my video editing. I always like to have 2 computers, one for traveling and one that I keep home. And this one is about half the price of my MacBook Pro, which I'm always reluctant to travel with. So what we're going to do in this video is unbox it and see what it looks like. And then we'll have a full review coming up soon on my main channel, so stay tuned for that. I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds, which is why I'm getting to this so late. I had to wait for it. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this unboxing, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and unbox the computer. We did take the cellophane off already, but everything else is going to be done here in real time as I experience it. Now I actually forgot which one I ordered a while back, but I did get the darker one here. I think this is the charcoal version, and I think it looks really nice. I had, back in the old days of the initial Intel MacBooks, the black MacBook, which I loved quite a bit. So I was feeling a bit nostalgic when I ordered this one. I really like the color though. And here you go. Now this is running with the new M2 processor, and in the full review we'll have a look at how it performs. As you saw, it boots right up the second you open it up, and it feels pretty thin. I would say it feels maybe a little thicker than the old one, but these don't have that tapered design that the old one did. So the old ones were a little thicker in the back versus the front. This one is more uniform. What I like about the new one here, and I'll give you my overhead shot, is that they added a MagSafe power supply here, so you can keep both of your Thunderbolt ports free. So on the old one, you had to, if you wanted to plug it in, you had to use one of the Thunderbolt slots for the power. So now you've got the ability to plug in the power separately, but of course you can still use these for power. On the other side here, we just have a headphone jack, but it's good to see that the headphone jack remains on here. The keyboard, I'll get started here on the keyboard. Keyboard feels very nice. It feels very similar to the new MacBook Pro keyboard. The travel might not be quite as deep on it, but it feels, well now speaking to me here, it feels better than the prior version MacBook Air. So that's nice. It doesn't feel as spongy. It feels clickier, if that makes sense. So it does feel pretty good. And the layout, as I'll show you on my MacBook Pro here, is very similar. So the keys do feel very much the same. The display, just on first impression here, looks really nice, a major improvement over the old one. You do, though, pick up the notch here, so you do have to get used to that. I have pretty much, I almost don't see it anymore on my MacBook Pro, but I think for those who are not accustomed to having a big notch out of the front of their computer, that might take some getting used to. This unit is fanless, so we'll see how well it does under consistent load. I've been reading that this one might throttle a little bit more than the old one did, so we'll have to see how it does on some of the 3D Mark stress tests and whatnot. But overall, I'm very pleased with the look and feel of this. It doesn't feel all that heavy. It feels much lighter than my MacBook Pro does, and I'm very eager to dive into this thing and start playing around with it. Let's see what else we get in the box here, though, because there is more to take out. And we'll switch back to my overhead view. This is the MagSafe power connector. And like my MacBook Pro, it has a nylon covering on it, so it feels more fabric-like. It's less likely to get tangled up. So that is nice. This is the magnetic connector here. As you can see, its color matches the color of the computer. So that's pretty cool. And of course, you can buy these separately for a lot of money. And inside also, we have the tiny little power supply here. And this has actually two USB Type-C power outputs on it. This is only, though, 35 watts, which means that you will get the full performance out of the computer, but there might be times when it's running at full load, it may not get much of a charge. They do sell a larger power supply, but of course, I've got a bunch of Apple power supplies kicking around here at 85 and 60 watts, which I will probably bring to bear on here. So the bare minimum power supply, you may want to upgrade that if you want faster charging, and a quite nice power cable here. And then beyond that, we have our usual Apple stuff here in the little envelope here with some brief instructions for booting up. Hopefully I get my stickers, because that's something we always expect out of these Apple packages. Are there stickers? Yes, in fact, we have stickers, and these stickers also match the decor of the MacBook here. So if you were looking for a non-white Apple sticker, here you go. You can buy one of these and get some different stickers in the box. I do miss the rainbow logo from the 80s, but it's kind of neat to see them finally coming up with a different color scheme on the stickers. So we're going to have a lot more on the MacBook Air with the M2 processor, and stay tuned for that review. I did opt for the slightly more expensive one that has a slightly more powerful GPU, so we'll discuss some of those differences in the full review as well. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. How about that? That was a great one-take wonder. All right. Ernst is here just after dinner. Welcome. Sudeep is here from California. Thank you for the kind words, much appreciated. Mohammed is from Malaysia. And what was my opinion of the Apple event? I was not, it was okay. I did order the iPhone 14 because my 13 is fine. I have a 13 Pro right now. But I ordered the 14 Pro just because the camera seems nicer, and I was very pleased with the jump from the 12 to the 13 insofar as camera was concerned, especially for video. So there were some things that I saw in the keynote on the 14 Pro that made sense. And for me, the upgrade isn't all that expensive because I can trade in my prior phone. I think I'm getting like $600 for the prior phone. So, all in, I'm only $499 or whatever. So that's it. The weight of the MacBook M2, let me look that up real quick. Let's take a look. I'll get the specs for you. So the M2, they still sell the M1, by the way, which is confusing as all heck. So the M2 weight is 2.7 pounds, or 1.24 kilograms. And I don't know, excuse me, I'm sniffly, sorry. I don't know what the M1, so 2.7 pounds versus, let's see what this one is. Versus 2.8, so it's slightly lighter. It's slightly lighter. All right, so let's get this thing plugged in and set up. So we're going to run some tests on it, and then we'll get going. But to continue the discussion about the Apple event, the Apple Watch I was not too crazy about. It's it's fine as a watch. I have one, but I didn't see any reason to upgrade over my Series 6 watch. So what I usually do with the watches is, this is only my second Apple Watch. So I had the original for a long time, and I wanted to wait until they had more health sensors before I did another upgrade. So I did not see anything on the new one that really warranted a significant upgrade. I mean, the temperature sensor was the only thing they added. And I didn't get the sense that the temperature sensor was for anything other than tracking cycles, which, that's something I need to do. So it just didn't seem like it would be a worthy upgrade for me. And bear with me for just a second here. I just got to sneeze again. Okay. All right, Thor, thank you for the follow on Amazon. So let me go and just mark this clip up real quick here. And then we'll proceed. So that, that clip was 16.6 gigabytes on my system. Now what remains to be seen is whether or not I end up with this or my wife ends up with this. I have a feeling after she looks at it, she's going to want it. So we'll see what, what happens. All right, let me get this connected to my Wi-Fi real quick. But yeah, from the allergy perspective, I am suffering today. And Martin says that MagSafe makes a big difference. It sure does, doesn't it? Are the ports full speed? I believe they are. What I'm not sure about is how many displays this supports. So the prior Air did not allow for 2 displays from 1 port. So I'm eager to try that out. I'll plug it into my dock. But yes, both ports are on the same side. And Ernst is not into that notch. And Mohammed makes a very good point also. They should add Face ID if they're going to have the notch. I agree. And Air, thank you very much for the kind words. And James Randolph is here. Hello there. Greetings. All right. So we're not going to migrate. We're just going to set up from scratch. So let me get my Apple ID banged in here. I don't know how many computers I have on my on my Apple ID. All right. I just got to set up the 2-factor on this, and then we will continue. You know, it's funny, I have the MacBook Pro, and it's very rare that you hear the fan come on. And Landon believes it is only 1 display. Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I'm sure they want to keep it so that, because there's such a close performance difference between the two, that they probably want to find a few reasons for people to get into the Pro. What I love about the Pro is that I have one of those Thunderbolt docks on my desk over there that has the multiple Thunderbolt daisy chain option. So I have 2 displays and a 10 gig Ethernet adapter plugged into the dock, along with some USB devices like a keyboard and mouse or whatever. And when I plug in a single cable, it charges this, but then shoots the display out, and I get the Ethernet for my multi-gig connection and everything. It's great. Do the ports support USB 4 external SSDs? I don't know. I think it does. Let me check the specs and see what it does support. And I'll tell you what, I've got a review coming up tonight of this new SanDisk Professional thing that we looked at the other day. And USB 4 is just, there's so much confusion because you got the 2x2 standard, it's just such a mess. So they say it is a USB 4 rated port, which means that that will support the USB 4 drives. But just be aware of the fact that if you have a 2x2 drive, which is mostly what SanDisk and WD are selling at the moment, you're not going to get the full performance out of it. All right, now we're going to do the fingerprint thing here. And this is very similar to the fingerprint reader that I have on my MacBook Pro. Feels very quick though. All right, my fingerprint's ready. And I'm sure there's going to be an update. I think it's going to pull down my Apple Pay from my Apple account. Yep. All right, oh great, we'll just do this later. All right, almost there. All right, what else we got for questions here? And Nop says this is just a preparation for Face ID. Yeah, I would imagine that is the case. You know, if anything, the notch feel. So here's one thing I'm noticing looking at both the Pro and the Air, is that the top bezel on the Air with the notch feels bigger. So the bezel is slightly thicker on this than it is on the 14-inch Pro. And I'm seeing that just by looking at both of them right now next to each other. Yeah, and we need to do some work on that. I have to find somebody just to do it for me. I have no time to, to do any of that. I am going to be working on parallels for an upcoming video, so we might do a little Linux on that video. And you know what I can do? I can test that display thing out right now if you want. Let me go over to my desk and just plug it in and see what happens. So I'm going to take the power out for a second. It came with mostly a full charge, by the way. So I'm going to run over to my, my desk. You will not be able to see this, but I will report back what happens here. So I'm going to plug in my Thunderbolt dock, which has the 2 displays plugged in, and we'll see what happens. So let me plug it in, and you'll hear it ding. So hear that? That was the dock connecting. And it looks as though it is only one display. Because, yeah, it's only picking up one of them. So these are functioning just like the other ones. So you could get 2 displays, but you're going to have to plug in both ports to get both displays. Which is kind of weird because the M1 Pro, my 14 here, works fine with an M1. You would think the M2 would do that. All right, so let's go and grab... I'm going to start with some benchmarking, and then we'll kind of go from there. So we're going to do... Actually, you know what I'll do first is I'll check and make sure we have everything updated, too. So there's no updates for the apps that are installed. Let's go over to the software update here. Oh, there is an update, 12.5.1. So let's do that. And we'll go from there. All right, so let's download that update. It won't take that long. It's a pretty quick one, I think. But I have to say, the display looks really nice on this. I'm really happy with it. It feels more premium to me than the other one. Yes, it's got that fit and finish that just looks... Maybe it's because the design more closely matches the Pro here, right? My Pro has seen better days. I got to get it cleaned up. Differences in RAM and drive memory choices. I think, let me see what the max is. I got mine with 16 gigs. Let me look through here. So I've got the 10-core GPU. So you have a choice. So the entry-level model has an 8-core GPU. I got the 10-core. Let's see what your memory options are. So the max memory is 24 gigabytes, and the max storage is 2 terabytes. I think I got 512 on this one. Let me see. Where's my preferences? I still got to set all this stuff up. Yeah, so I got the 512 storage on this one. It feels fine. I do want to run the update, though, because it may have driver updates and all that other good stuff. Mohammed is still rocking the M1 with the Air. Huh. Half a minute to open the Office app. Is that the Microsoft Office app? And they do. Yeah, I've got to give Apple credit for that. They do, even on their low-end devices, they put in some nice displays. Yeah, so this one is 16 gigabytes with the 10-core GPU. The display is 13.6 inches, 2560 by 1644. 500 gigabytes of flash storage on this one. And for what I use this for, it's going to be fine. But like I said, my wife might just take this and then give me my old one back. So we'll find out. And we'll let this kind of run through here. It says 20 minutes, but I think it's going to be quicker than that. But as with everything, we always have an update to do when we first get these things going here. So we'll just be kind of chill today. I like the color though. Isn't this cool? I was expecting it to be a little bit more black. It does have some, it reflects more light because of the metal, I guess. So it's not like jet black. And I'm guessing it's probably going to show, so you can already see it's got some grease from my wrists on it already. So it might show the dirt a little bit more. I probably bought the wrong one. And we'll just let it finish updating here, and we'll take it from there. So this has Wi-Fi 6 on board. Let me take a look and see exactly what specs there are on the Wi-Fi. So it is 802.11ax. It doesn't say how many radios there are. My guess would be 2x2. And Bluetooth 5. And I'm guessing, well, it's probably run the speed test app on it and see how the Wi-Fi does. All right, so let's do, usually I connect to the Xfinity server in Boston. You know, do the New Jersey one. Let's see what happens. This could also be a result of the download that it's doing for the system update. Usually I get around 700 megabits or so. Yeah, so it's probably a 2x2 radio. It's going about 600 right here. And I think it might still be downloading stuff for this system update. So that's probably what's going on there. And glad the Slim Pro, yeah, that's a nice system. Every year they come up with one that's like kind of the one that I think is the best all-rounder. And that Slim 7 Pro X is this year's all-rounder for me. It seems like the most equipped. And no, so the Macs do not, I don't think any of the M1 Macs support the external GPUs. Ron wants to know, is that the color that has the smudges issue? I was not aware of that. There's always something that comes out with these things, isn't there? Ah. Yeah, this is the one I have, the midnight one. Yeah, it's a fingerprint magnet. I'm just reading this review here. I guess there's some issues of the paint chipping off around some of it. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I like machines that look like they've been used a bit. So there's only one speed of the MacBook Air M2 as far as the processor is concerned. So if we go up to the chip, I don't even think they have a megahertz rating on these anymore. It's just number of cores. So I have the the 8-core CPU and the 10-core GPU. And you'll see all that in the title of the stream today. Yeah, so I bought this one to keep because my wife's MacBook Pro that I got her a number of years ago died. And I sent it off to repair like a bunch of times. I was done paying for it. So I gave her my old MacBook Air. So I usually keep 2 computers. One that's like more powerful that I kind of keep here, or if I got some big project, I mean, like the MacBook Pro is like my desktop computer essentially. And then when I travel, I don't like to travel with something as expensive. So I usually keep a less expensive laptop with me for traveling that can still run all my stuff. And for a while, my MacBook Air was my only computer because it was that good. And then the Pro here is a little bit better. All right, we're almost done with the update here, and then we'll reboot. And the computer is going to restart. And then once the update's done, we'll take a look at its performance level here. And Al wants to know, what will I use the laptop for? I'll use it for everything, unless my wife takes it, at which point she will use it for everything. So generally, I have like a computer that I keep down here, and then I've got one upstairs in the kitchen. And what's nice about these machines is that they run Final Cut really well. So I can do a lot. Like I said, I was editing most of my videos on a MacBook Air before, although I haven't edited the 4K stuff on an Air yet. So I'm not sure how that might do. Logic KGR, thank you for the super chat. And I'm glad you enjoyed that video. The video performance was horrible on that. I'm going to do a video about the video, to be honest with you. I might go back down. It all depends on how next week is looking. I've got to lock in I have to they're going to reissue my press credentials, but I have to decide if I'm going back by the 12th. The issue that I have going back is this is costing me a fortune every time I go down. And it really bummed me out that the video did not perform very well. Like it was my least performing video of the month, or of the last 10. It was really bad. And that really bummed me out because I love the space stuff. I just don't think there's a lot of interest unfortunately, in space. So that harms the performance. I think that video would have done better if there was a launch at the end of it. And so I might actually I may just like republish it with the launch at the end if there ends up being a launch. Because I have a feeling that this was one of those things where you got to eat your vegetables and then there's dessert, and the vegetables were the only serving on that video. So I think that's what harmed it. It was, and I think the fact that it didn't launch meant that there wasn't a lot of public interest in searching for the event. So I might go back. I would like to get back down just because I've invested so much money and time into it. The worst part is that I got most of what you saw done on my first trip versus the second one. So I got very little out of the second trip. Although the odd thing is the live stream that we did on the second the second trip where we did the live stream the night before, that video got more views than the actual event did. So that was it. And James said my interest was, I wonder if it was the title of it or something, right? Like, I don't know. So I might actually just like re-upload the video with the launch at the end of it, just because I put so much into it. But this is the case with everything I do, is that the more money and time I put into something, the performance is lower, which is counter to everything I was raised on. Like, put your hard work in, do your best, don't settle for second, like, give it your all. And every time I do, it tanks. So it shows how it goes. But I'm glad a lot of you liked it. I enjoyed it. I mean, if nothing else, it was like a nice little vacation, if you will, for me to go and see that. So we will see how it goes. Sam Lazar is here. Hello there. And Ron's got a, oh, that's cool, a 3DFX pass-through to the Windows. Yeah, I think I have, what is it, DOSBox? There's one of the versions of DOSBox, right, that has the 3DFX emulation. And you know what I loved about those interviews is that everyone I talked to was so enthusiastic. You know, it's like when I go to these tech shows, and I like the tech stuff, but you know, really the end result for a tech show is to sell you something at the end of it, right? Like, here's our new laptop, look how awesome it is. And yeah, it's exciting to work on those things, but it's all about the purchase in the end. What was fun about how NASA set up the press day for us was that it was a lot like the tech shows that I go to, where you have just people standing with stuff to show you, except they're all about like getting humans into space and keeping them there. Like there's a greater mission. You know, it's like it's more than just selling something. It's getting to the next stage. Now, granted, you know, a lot of these. So the woman we spoke to from the Johnson Space Center was a NASA employee. Some of the other folks that we talked to there work for contractors, obviously, who want the PR to, you know, keep their contracts going. But still, like the people that are working on this are really about, you know, the mission, which was really inspiring. And we're just waiting for this update to finish going through, and then we'll run some benchmarks on it. And so, yeah, so I have the 10-core, 512, and 16 gigs of RAM. That's what I got. And I'm with Frank. You know, it's funny, I booted up my 12-inch MacBook because I have my first grader using it. And I'm like, oh man, I just love how small this thing is. I wish it had the M1 on it. And Jesse wants to, you know what? You don't have to dare me, because if, I think I did this. If you go and look at my Apple IIgs video, I did get that one on the internet because it has a Ethernet card inside of it. And Lodgy said it's yeah, it is a nice break from it. And I was going down there covering this stuff before I even started the YouTube channel. So in many ways, it's just like my happy place to go down there. So I will probably go back. I just need to figure out, I got to check with my wife, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, with the kids going to school and everything. So I'm going to be in New York. I have an event I'm covering in New York. It's actually going to be an interesting one. It's back to the tech grind, but it's different. It's a different kind of tech grind because we got invited to cover this event for South Korean tech startups. So we don't think about South Korea a lot as a hub of technology, but it really is. So we're going to go and check that out. So that is not this week, but next week, the week after this coming week. So the 21st and 22nd. And I theoretically could leave New York and get to Florida for the 23rd launch attempt, but that's going to be pushing it. So we'll see what happens. I'll have an opinion on this when my phone comes in. I will say this much, and I'm ticked off about this. So usually what I do when these phones come out, I buy them direct from Apple. And this time I had to give them my phone number so that the phone would activate when I get it. And Verizon dinged me with a $35 upgrade fee, even though I'm paying full price for the phone, which I think is ridiculous. Like, what does it cost them, right? I'm going to go fight them out on that one, I think. And I think, you know, like the space stuff, this is what inspires people. I mean, if you think about where the world was when we landed on the moon, it was, you know, things were probably even worse than they are now. And I think it inspired a lot of people. It certainly inspired a whole generation to think about, you know, doing space stuff. And those folks are, you know, kind of mid-career now, right? Like that kind of goes downstream generationally. And so comparatively versus what we spend on other things here in this country, you know, the space program is a bargain, especially for what it generates, because we don't spend anywhere near what you think you're spending on it. It's pretty crazy how minimal it is. Yeah, I'll probably re-upload those to the extras channel, but I am definitely, I think what I'm going to do, because so few people saw the original video. So what happens is that if the interest is low on the video, YouTube doesn't even try to show it to you unless you're following the subscription feed. So I think what I'm going to do is probably like repackage what I did already and then have the launch at the end of it, because people will watch the launch part for sure. And it kind of tells the whole story, because if this thing's going up, it's kind of good to know what's on there. So, well, I'm always willing to take super chats, Mark. So, yeah, I will consider that. You know, it's expensive. So just to put it, you know, it's about, depending on the flight costs. The flight costs have gone down considerably. I actually lucked out on the first one. So we did find this new airline in my state sponsored me on the first go around. So that helped with the airfare on the first run. But, you know, the room rates down there are ridiculous. So I've been getting these Airbnbs. So I was able to offset that by having some friends stay with me. So like it's not as bad, but this next trip will be the most expensive one. And I don't like having people pay for things that I want to do. I don't think that's, you know, if people want to voluntarily do it, that's fine. But I don't like doing that stuff where, hey, pay to send me somewhere. It doesn't sit right with me. But we'll get it there. So the 24th is looking more realistic than because the two dates they're looking at, I think one is the 23rd. Let me see and they're requesting these dates because the other thing is that there are batteries on the self-destruct system, and the range has to agree to allow those batteries to continue that far. So let me see what they've requested for dates. Actually, I can pull up my email. We're still waiting on this thing to finish up. So I got an email from them yesterday about next steps here. Okay, so NASA has identified September 23rd and the 27th as the earliest possible launch opportunities. So I could theoretically get down there for the 23rd. Oh, that's a brutal one though. So I'm just looking at this thing right now. So the launch window on the 23rd is 6:47 a.m. and then the 27th is 11:37 a.m. But the 23rd of the two is probably the most ideal for them because it's a 2-hour window, which gives them more time to, you know, hash out fuel issues. So they would probably want us there at midnight at the latest on the 23rd. So when we went down for the first one, the launch was slated for 8:30 a.m. They wanted us there at 2:30 a.m. They like to have you there 6 hours ahead of time. They did have a great food truck there this time, though. That was good. And then the 27th is only a 70-minute window, so it's well short of the 2 hours. Yeah, so we'll see. I can always cancel my flight, so maybe I'll try to book something and see what I can get done. I did see that. That was from a while ago, right? Of the Buran? Yeah, that was pretty wild that they got in there. And you know what was neat about the Buran space shuttle is that it had powered flight in the air on the way back down. So it actually had I don't know if it was a jet engine, it must have been a jet engine, but it actually had power. So the space shuttle glided back with no power. Yeah, I could rent an RV. It's funny, actually my Airbnb was abutting an RV dealership. I should have walked over there. So we'll have to see. Well, it's funny about this Motel 6 thing. So I used to stay at this place. It was a Best Western called the Space Shuttle Inn, which is essentially, you know, it's like it's like your Motel 6. It is, you know, 1 star, if you will. But yeah, for a bed, a flop house, it was fine. Let me see what their rates are right now. Every time there's a launch, they jack the rates up to like to who knows what. So if I look here, in case you're wondering, we're just waiting for this thing to update. So right now, let's edit this and let's look at the 20. So they said the 23rd was the launch date in the morning. So I would get there on the 22nd. Yeah, I'm just pushing my luck here. The good news is I've got a great airline now that can get me there and back, like super, super convenient. Yeah, so $173 a night for what really is like a Motel 6 kind of thing. Their most expensive room, I mean, if you saw this place, you'd be like, what? $550 a night for the suite, with 1 bedroom. I don't know what's happened to this place. I used to book this place for like $45 a night. I mean, $158 isn't bad, I guess, with the current state of affairs. But what's really cool, though, there's 2 things I like about this place. One is that it's not far from the Space Center, but the other thing that I like about it is that it's got a Waffle House like on the premises. You just walk out your door and there's the Waffle House. And I love the Waffle House. Yeah, it's kind of similar. Actually, what's funny about the self-destruct systems is that there's usually there's a military person. You know, this now it's the space. It used to be Air Force, now Space Force, who has the finger on the button. So if it goes off nominal, they will explode. You know, they'll blow it up, and that includes if there's people on it. So all the SpaceX rockets, they all have this, and the range has control over that decision. And it's really a split-second decision. They have a variance as to where, if it goes outside of that variance, because the last thing you want is this thing getting close to having it rain debris all over the ground. The good news that they have added to this, and also to SpaceX, that they have an escape mechanism. So if they do have to destruct, there's a way to get the astronauts away from it ahead of that. Justin Roberts is here. Hello there. Yeah. I love that scene in Star Trek 3. What was the sequence? Kirk, destruct 1, whatever, right? 1A. Yeah, I think the Russians found with their space shuttle, as we discovered the hard way, is that it's very hard to make a lifting body that can do flying and spacing, right? And yes, I did order the iPhone 14 Pro. And I'm going to trade in my old one. Mainly because I'm curious. I've been really pleased with the rapid development of their camera system, especially as it relates to video. And I would say the most appealing thing to me on the new phone is that it can shoot 4K now in cinematic mode, where it'll do that bokeh, that fake bokeh. I've really been impressed with cinematic mode on my iPhone with the kids. But the current one only does 1080p, so to go to 4K is intriguing. And I think the overall sensors have been improved too. It's going to be hard to top what they've got with the 13 Pro. And there was a couple things in the 13 Pro that surprised me over the 12. One is that the telephoto lens went from that 2x to a 3x, and that was substantial. Like, it's got a good zoom on it, and it's a real zoom. It's not a fake zoom. And I think they were talking about using the sensor. So when I get the new one, it's going to have like a 0.5 with a physical lens. It's going to have a 1, which is the typical lens that they have. And then they're going to have a 2, which is a digital zoom on the 1, because the 1 now has got a larger sensor that they can crop and zoom. But so much of this stuff now is all software, right? So it's pretty crazy. All right. Guess what? We are up and running. So we're going to run a couple of tests on this, and we'll see how much time I have to do more. I would like to start with the 3D Mark stuff, just because that's what I'm most curious about. So we're going to do the wildlife benchmark here. And what's interesting is that this is actually an iPad app, but because the M1s, or in this case the M2, is compatible with the iOS apps. That's how it works. I had no idea the Apple TV still hadn't gotten HDR. Huh. Yeah, and that's the other thing is like I have yet to figure out how to get the Dolby. I don't even shoot in Dolby Vision on my phone because it's so hard to work with, right? So when I got it, I'm like, oh, I got an Apple TV, 4K, I've got the phone, I could shoot Dolby Vision. What do I get? Nothing. Can't get it to work. And no one's been able to explain to me how to do that. All right, so we're going to run the Wildlife Extreme Unlimited mode. And I think there's a stress test on here too, right? I don't know. Yeah, so we'll do the stress test also. I'm just curious about throttling. All right, so let's start this. And what this is going to do is run it on screen as opposed to, or within internally. So we're not going to see the demo actually run. Typically no penalty for iOS apps, as far as I can tell. Because I've run this benchmark on, I ran this on the M1 iPad Air, and I got the same exact score on that as I did on the actual MacBook Air. Yeah, so what I used to do is just get the phone and swap the SIM cards when I bought the phone. It was super quick and easy, but no, can't do that anymore. In fact, when I got my old phone, oh, this was interesting. So when I got the, which iPhone was it? I think the 12 Pro had the first ultra wideband radio on it. And so I had a 4G SIM. I had to get the 5G SIM. So I figured, well, it's got an eSIM. Let me just use that. And I couldn't activate it with it. Wouldn't work. So I had to go get a 5G SIM. It was a whole long thing. And oh, then the other thing was, when they shipped me the 5G SIM, I said, hey, can I just go to the store and pick it up? Well, if you go to the store, they're going to charge you $12, but we can ship it to you for free. Like, where's the logic there? They got a store full of 5G SIM cards. They can't just give me one there. I have to pay for it at the store. Just wonder why retail is collapsing. All right, so let me give you the score here. And if you go to Lon.TV/benchmarks, you can see this in my spreadsheet. So we're going to go over to the 3D Mark Wildlife benchmark. And I'm going to go over to all right, so this is the extreme test. Now the MacBook Air M1, this is actually considerably faster than the M1. So our score is 6,818, and the original M1 scored 4,941. 6818 at 40.8 FPS. This is a pretty big bump actually in performance, about 10 frames per second on the extreme test. That's no slouch. The question is, how long can it maintain it over time is the, right? So let's run the regular one. So this is the regular wildlife test. So this one is going to have a much higher score, but we'll see how this one compares. So the MacBook M1 had 18,030 on this test. I would expect us getting around 20. Sorry, everybody, it was the 55-minute mark, as we've been discovering. YouTube craps out at 55 minutes every time when I stream 4K, and they have yet to fix this problem. And they used to email me constantly saying, we're working on it, and now it's like, whatever. Okay, so 24,716. This is MacBook. And by the way, Lon.TV/benchmarks, you can see what we're getting here. Apple M2. Our score is 24,716 at 148.0 FPS. Now, that is about 40-ish frames per second faster than the M1s we're getting. And that includes, let's see my, okay, so my M1 Pro, which has a faster GPU, is still much, much quicker. So my Pro got 64,322. This one got 24,716. But still much faster than the M1. What is it, like 25%? So, and it could just be the the GPU cores or just improved performance there, but still pretty darn good. All right, let's do a stress test. So this one's going to take a little bit to run, I think, but this will give us a sense of how well it handles the thermals. I've heard that the throttling on this one is a little bit more extreme than it was before. And you know what kills me is that there's not much of a gaming ecosystem on this one. So, hi, Christopher. Thanks for stopping in. Crab says, I am the bleeding edge of YouTube. I sure am. I find bugs. If there's a bug, I will find it. And I would bet you that Apple will manufacture their chips anywhere they can get a good price on them. From a supply chain standpoint, all this stuff has to get to Shenzhen anyhow to get manufactured. I don't see them changing that anytime soon. And what's most intriguing about Foxconn, or Foxconn, who makes this stuff, is that although they're one of China's biggest employers, they're owned by a Taiwanese guy. So Foxconn is a Taiwanese company that employs a good chunk of people in China. So it's one of those things where I just don't think you're going to see a lot of things happen there beyond bluster, because there are significant economic consequences. Now this test is going to loop until we get an idea. I don't know how long it takes to run it, but we'll just let it run for a little bit. The unboxer's not sure about 16 or 24 gigabytes. You know what's interesting? So my MacBook Pro that I have is 32 gigs. But I have been running with 16 gigs of RAM up until this computer for the last 10 years, and it's been fine. And it's kind of like my internet connections. I don't know if there is a single use case. It depends on what you're doing, of course. Like if you're doing 3D modeling or whatever, you're going to need as much RAM as possible. But I think for what I do and what a lot of people do, there's not one single application that's going to use all that RAM, right? It's a matter of how much stuff you've got running at the same time. But I found 16 gigs to be fine for quite a while. So IBM, I don't think, is ever going to make hardware again. They are a consulting company. They make a lot more money not making anything than they do making stuff. They certainly have software packages that they're building, AI stuff that they're doing and whatever, but a lot of that is to provide services, not to make hardware. So I don't think they'll ever go back to making hardware again, because they make far more money selling services. Anything that supports that service infrastructure, I think, is going to be what they're after. So the M2, I don't think it's on that new 4mm. So M2 is 5 nanometer. And just from the general specs that Apple had listed for it, and we're seeing this in the benchmark, it's 1.4 times faster than the M1 as far as CPU is concerned. 18% faster CPU and a 35% faster GPU. per core, I'm guessing. We'll run the Geekbench on this after it cools down. This test will work it a little bit, so we'll have to let that cool off a bit before we... Happy Saturday to you, go Wall Streets. Yeah, I've got like another 45 minutes or so before I got to take off. And see, I found the 8 gigabytes. Yeah, I think it's a matter of what you're doing, right? My last portable machine had 8 gigs, and it was fine. These days, I'm usually starting around 16. And we'll let this finish up here. I don't see too much of a variation on the frame rate yet, although we'll see what it looks like when it's done. It's definitely getting warm though, so we'll see what it reports back when it's completed here. Yeah, we have not done the speedometer test yet. So right now we're starting with the 3D Mark stuff. But Wildlife certainly ran better than the M1 for sure. There's definitely a bump here, about 25% or so. And what I'm looking at now is to see what kind of thermal throttling we can expect on this. And we're going to have to wait for it to cool off after this test ends before we do any more testing on it, because it's going to be at a rather high state of temperature when this is all over. I'm not sure how long this runs for, so we'll just let it keep going here. But it looks like it's still holding steady here. Let me see how it feels temperature-wise. I mean, it's warm, but it's not hot. You know what I mean? So it's definitely keeping itself operating here. And I'm seeing that this test has been running at about 30 frames per second throughout, and it looks like it's pretty close to that mark, even 5 or 10 minutes in here. So you've seen that the 10-core GPU is slower than the 8-core. I will have to look and see what other test results are out there to get a good indicator of that. That would surprise me. And this is not a second-generation computer, but this one is a little newer than the ones the reviewers first got, because I just got this yesterday. It came in yesterday. Yesterday or Thursday, one or the other. So whatever hardware glitches they had to deal with have probably been rectified on this one, because I ordered this a while ago. But from what I'm seeing so far, I'm really pleased with the performance on it. It is a little pricey. I think the the entry-level one is $1,100. So it's a little more than the MacBook Air. Although if you have a connection to a school, you can usually get the education discount. And I went with the 512 gigabyte SSD. That wouldn't surprise me. It's possible that the 10 core could throttle sooner. And that's something that perhaps a system update could adjust for too, right? So we'll have to see. So, okay, so we are halfway through the test right now. So this is going to be like another 5 or 10 minutes. So it's going to run 20 of these loops. We're on the 10th one right now. Yeah, I guess that's true. If you try to help with that passive cooling, right? Because there's no system fan on this at all. So whatever cooling it's going to do is going to be through throttling down. But it looks like, again, we're halfway through this, but the frame rate has been pretty steady throughout this whole thing. And it's funny, see, I say this all the time also, it's like the Time Spy test that we use on the PCs, it looks like it would be an awesome VR game. Because like the character holds up the mirror and they reach through the mirror to pull out something from the past to fight in the future. That would be totally amazing as a... All right, sit tight for 1 second here, folks. I'm just going to run and grab a quick snack upstairs. I'll be right back. So we got another 5 or 10 minutes before this is done running. All right. Oh, yep, squeaky door time. In my house, the squeaky door doesn't get the grease. But it's a very attractive laptop. Because remember, the original one was the continuation of the Intel design. It was the same casing. We got 7 loops to go. Does it overheat? We'll find out, won't we? I have found most things don't overheat. They just shut down before they overheat. It's definitely warm to the touch, but not alarmingly so. Yeah, it's not any hotter than my other one. And I'll tell you what, I could probably count on one hand how many times I've heard the fan kick on my MacBook Pro. Even when it's docked. Like, even when I'm outputting video, it rarely gets to the point where the fan comes on. And I got a feeling this one's going to show scratches a lot more than the silver ones will. So we got another 5 more loops to go here. And then we'll let her cool down for a little bit before we run some more on it. But you know, I'd likely run this on, I don't think I ever ran the stress test on my M1 Air, so I'll probably run that on the other one. That one's right upstairs. I can do a comparative there. And my other Air is the higher end Air. So like this one, I got the more powerful one than there before. Yeah, and I think I agree a lot with this statement. I think that, you know, a lot of reviewers will try to find something to complain about, right? This would be, you know, not a computer I would recommend for someone doing higher end tasks because it doesn't have active cooling on it. At the same time, it's able to do quite a bit without any kind of active cooling, right? So the performance for what it can deliver versus a similar machine with an Intel or an AMD processor on there is pretty impressive. I will say I'm noticing that we're hovering under 30, whereas before we were hovering closer to 30. So there's a little, I think we're seeing a little bit of throttling here. When we get the final result, that'll give us a better idea of it. This is a good point, right? It's a Ferrari engine and a Fiat body, right? But I'd look at this as something like if you're a college student or a high school student, you know, you wanted a nice laptop to do college stuff. I mean, all the things you would do, watching movies, emailing, doing your papers, even video editing. I don't think it's going to be a problem on this one. And boy, do I got stuff I can demo for video editing on it now. All right, we got one more loop after this one. So we're on 19 right now. All right, we're almost done. So thank you all for sticking with me here. Here's our last loop, and then we'll get the full results. Then we're going to let it cool off for a little bit before we do anything more with it. Yeah, I'm actually eager to see, maybe I'll grab one of my 4K, my little drive over there. So I have a 4K 60 project I've been working on, which you all will see soon. And Final Cut runs great on these on these M1 processors. That's the thing that really surprised me, was that when I got the Air M1, how it was doing. So when I bought the Air, my Intel MacBook Pro was about 3.5, 4 years old. The Air was outperforming it for for video editing, 1080p video editing, let alone 4K. All right. So we don't get, oh, we do. Okay, so the stability was 70%. And I'm not sure if this follows the same convention as the other stress tests that they have. But I'm going to have to make a new thing here. Let's see. Do I have it on? Excuse me. I'm going to have to make a new thing here. Let's see. 3D Mark. Because see, on the old one, the stability score, if it wasn't 97%, it was failing. But I think what I might do actually is grab this entire screen, because this appears like, let's do a whole screenshot of this. Because you actually have the whole thing. So you can see that it started up here, but it did, it throttled, but it didn't lose performance after that. It didn't throttle that much, at least according to this. What it doesn't give me, though, is the temperature. And I can use this for B-roll later. So it did really well in the first two, which is kind of why it's good to run this, because the other wildlife test was only one shot without it being warmed up yet, right? So, so I'm going to make a new column in my spreadsheet, I think, for and this new one is going to be called 3D Mark Wildlife Stress Tests, because it's a different stress test. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run this on my MacBook Pro later and just see what we end up with. So MacBook Air M2, Apple M2. Best loop, 6268. Lowest loop, 4409. Stability, 70.3%. Because it'll be neat to look at my MacBook Pro, which has active cooling, and see what the differences are. And then maybe compare it against the M1. And if I click compare, oh, I can compare it to others. Because I'm curious if it has, yeah, so they don't have an M2 for comparison here yet. But I could probably look around and see, because it might be neat to see how that 8-core did versus the 10-core in this one. And yeah, we did double check that. So it's still the issue here that it only works with one external display. That is it. All right, so that's good. So we're going to let it cool off a bit, and then when it's cooled off, I'll try the browser bench test. But another thing I wanted to try was booting up Parallels, because I did get a code for Parallels. And apparently you can just install Windows on this thing. So let me download my trial here. And apparently it's like one click to install Windows 11, so we'll see what happens with that. Because I'm going to do another video about Parallels and Windows 11 on it. And the best time to do this would be when it's clean, right? Yeah, I need to get into DaVinci Resolve. I haven't really played around with it that much. But we'll get Parallels installed on here. It's definitely a lot thinner than my MacBook Pro. You probably can't see it easily here, but my Pro is about, I'd say probably a centimeter higher. All right, so you know what I'm going to do actually while we're sitting here. Is do a little B-roll recording here of installing Windows. This is kind of neat because it actually just, you click a button and you get Windows. Like there's no downloading the ISO and whatever, like it's got a one-click workflow for it that I think might be appealing to some folks. So we'll get this going. I'll look at games in the full review. The problem on the Mac is that there's not an equivalent of a game library. Even, you could try to get some of the Mac ports of Intel, of Windows games to run, but it's not, even on an Intel machine, it's not as good as a PC with a proper GPU. I don't think whatever the slower SSD is relevant to anything what somebody's going to do with this thing. And a bulk of what I do on my systems, I'm doing on external SSDs for video editing, so that's typically what my process is. Yeah, I'm actually eager to see how Windows runs on here, especially like, kind of running through our usual test suite of things that we do on these ARM-based Windows devices. I suspect this will run a lot better than that piece of junk I reviewed the other day. Your estimated 1 minute is actually 1 minute. Is that what it said? I missed it. That's funny. Let's see here. Yeah, we got about 30 minutes until YouTube dumps us off again, so hopefully it will be okay there. And I'm guessing I'm just going to give it access to everything. But look at that, we're already, you got Windows going. I mean, that was pretty quick. That was a lot quicker than having to go hunt around for the ISO and go do all that stuff. Now remember, this is ARM Windows, but it's ARM Windows 11, which means that it will work with most of your software. The performance of said software is obviously the big question mark, but this was pretty quick. Yeah, and that was on Wi-Fi, so imagine if I had it plugged into Ethernet. But, one of the things that I pointed out in my video that I did of my dad's new fiber optic connection is that he paid for a 500 gigabit connection. 500 megabit. I have a 6 gigabit connection. The speed in which I was able to upload a YouTube video with my dad's connection was identical to the speed in which I upload from here with 6, and that's because of all the peering arrangements. And yes, that's very true. It actually installed faster than the OS X updates. or OS 12 or whatever it is they have it at today. So how did I manage to talk to an actual astronaut? So they had a media day, and you just sign up. And here's what was interesting. As a father of 2 girls, you become more sensitive to this sort of stuff. So all the male astronauts were booked almost immediately when they released that sign-up sheet. The women were not as quick to have their interview times eaten up. So I was able to get, I could have had another one, but I wanted to get a few other things while we were there. So we interviewed Shannon Walker, who has been in space twice on 2 different missions, on Soyuz, a Russian spacecraft, and on the SpaceX spacecraft. They named a recovery boat after her. There's a boat named Shannon out there. And she could very well be one of the first women to walk on the moon once things get ironed out. So yeah, it was fun. They had a media day. It was actually a lot like our tech events that we go to, where they just had a whole bunch of people and events set up there. And believe it or not, like the big get there, in addition to the astronaut, was the science directorate. So he's the guy that we talked to, Dr. Z. He is in charge of NASA's science directorate. The entire science program at NASA is his responsibility. And he was just sitting in the cafeteria there, so we grabbed him. I regret not asking him about the UFO stuff, because he's also in charge of that. I should have asked him about that. Maybe I would have gotten more views had I asked him about the UFO thing. Yeah, we'll do that. I think we'll play around with a few of the different mechanisms. Is Steam's Proton thing working on the Mac yet, or not yet? I guess that's more of a Unix versus an emulator, right? So. But yeah, this is going pretty quick, I think. Yeah, I think we're going to have a working copy of Windows faster than we would an OS 10 update. That's pretty crazy. Do I like Windows 10 or 11? So I don't have much of a preference, although for my video production machine, vMix is not recommending people upgrade to 11 yet. So for my day-to-day Windows computers, I run 11. I think 11 is much better if you have a Windows ARM scenario like we're going to be having here, because it is much more compatible. But beyond that, Windows 11 feels a lot like 10 on my, my gaming computer and stuff. But thank you, MG Fur. I wish more people would watch that dispatch. There was a lot of. I'm going to tell you the whole story. We're going to have a weekly wrap up on Monday where I'm going to talk about all the things that went. It was all just minor travel issues, but it's still going to be fun to talk about. I had the airport that I was leaving from got shut down due to like a freak accident, like a fuel truck tipped over. So I didn't get in until like 3 o'clock in the morning to Florida. My hotel had been canceled. My rental car wasn't there when I got to the airport. I mean, it's like one thing after the other. I felt like there was all these barriers being put in front of me to prevent anything from happening while I was down there. And I just said, nope, we're gonna shuffle through all of that. All right. I'm gonna sign into my Parallels account. And we have, I mean, this was not even 10 minutes, was it? Oh, it does this. Hang on a second. It's got the coherence mode. Let me go. I never liked the coherence mode on Parallels. It's always felt like how do I get out of coherence mode? I always liked having a separate window versus this coherence thing. Let's see if I can show you what I'm. So what it's doing is it runs in this coherence mode. Oh, it's in this spot somewhere. So view actions. So what it does is it puts your, it gives you like the Windows apps kind of run in their own windows, which is fine, but I don't like them mixing together because I get confused as to what I'm actually doing and what operating system I'm on. So I always prefer, yeah, exit coherence mode. And so, oh, so apparently hitting the plus puts you into coherence mode. So so full screen is different. Okay, there we go. Look at that, Windows. You'll notice that you don't have the notch because, wow, look how fast that is. Jeez. This is virtualization, and it's faster than, I think, any of the Windows ARM computers that we've reviewed. Wow, that's crazy. You can install like Game Pass on here too and everything. That was fast. Thank you, Matt Thomas Taylor. Yeah, do me a favor, watch it a few more times. Because like I said, like, here's what was interesting about that video. It was not viewed all that much, but it had the most, like, the like to view ratio was higher on that one than a lot of the other stuff that I worked on. And, you know, I know that I'm not like, you know, I'm a one-man show essentially, so I'm not gonna be able to do the production value that you'll see from, you know, from other people out there. But I walked away from that upload thinking, this was a pretty, I thought it was a pretty good video. I thought it was informative. I learned a lot. You know, if I learn something, then I know the viewers are going to learn something, but man, it just did not perform well. Which leads me to I think for my experiment here, I'm going to, if I go back for the launch, I'll probably re-upload the whole thing and have the launch be at the end of it. Because I think that video should do better. And I think people didn't want to eat their vegetables, which was learning about all the technical stuff. All right, so let's do a quick Windows boot here and see how fast it comes up. All right, so here's Windows 11. We'll click on that. That is crazy. That's from nothing. That boots faster than a computer does. All right, you do that. That'll help. Every little bit helps. But I did get this cool hat. Isn't that nice? They were handing them out. So what happened was, like in the press center, when you go in, they have this table set up. So all the contractors. So when you walk in, you've got your NASA PR people, you've got the European Space Agency people, you've got all the contractors, and I think it was Lockheed Martin. Like every half hour or so, he'd take a couple hats and throw them out on the counter. Not all at once. They had a lot of donuts there. The Krispy Kreme like dropped a whole truckload of donuts on us. I did eat one. It was pretty good. And then we had these food trucks. They had this grilled cheese food truck, and they did breakfast sandwiches. And man, I was so hungry that morning. It was like it hit the spot. So wow. So Windows boots up. I mean, that's super fast. And I'll look at getting a Linux distribution on this too. Let's take a look at, let me get Final Cut Pro on here. We'll do one more thing and then I got a jet, but I will definitely look at some gaming and some other stuff to get a feel for how this all works. Let's pull up Final Cut Pro and hit the button. Boop. And this is another 3.5 gigabytes that we have to download, but that'll come in pretty quick. Hello, Marius from Romania. Good to see you. Isn't that crazy how fast that booted up? Can't believe it. And I have a feeling when we start putting it through its paces, so we're going to do a whole video on parallels on the Mac. But I have a feeling when we put it through its paces that it's going to be running better on this than it would on any of those ones that we've looked at so far. I mean, what's the irony of that? Like Windows runs better on Apple Silicon than it does on anything else we've seen. Oh, you're setting up oh, cool. Yeah, let me know what frequency, if you can tune into the 10-meter band. Is that the one I'm using? Yeah. Yes, they feed. Well, you know what's funny? They never used to feed us very well at these things. So they have a. So the way this works at the Space Center, we are allowed. It's kind of crazy. So when you get your press credentials, you go to the checkpoint and you can just drive onto the property. But you have to be very careful about where you go because you're only allowed in the press center area, which is the spot where the clock is and everything. And they have a building there. There's facilities. It's fine. But you're not allowed to go anywhere else on the properties. You can't just drive into the vehicle assembly building if you wanted to. But we are allowed to go to the cafeteria, which is about I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile back up. You can walk right to it. So the cafeteria is only open during the week. So in the past, a lot of the launches I went to were on the weekend. We never had anything to eat all day. And you can't just leave because it's so remote. It takes you an hour just to get to the closest fast food place and back. So so it was nice that they arranged for food trucks. You had to pay for the food, obviously, but it was nice that they had arranged for food trucks, which was great. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pop in my, I have another dispatch video coming up that I was going to make my next video, but I'm going to space out these dispatches a little bit. This is one that I did at Retro World Expo in Hartford, Connecticut. And here's the cool thing about Final Cut Pro. I have the whole project on this drive. So all I got to do is just plug this into the Thunderbolt. And this is a 4K 60 project. So what I'm going to do is just go over to my drive here, and we'll go Retro World Expo. Yeah, there you go.
Get about what the original boxes look like. They were such an.
This is a 4K 60 project, so.
Birthday gift or your Christmas gift. You open it.
I was Mr. Nintendo.
So that is a.
As we all were.
Right. And
that was a hard. So that hasn't rendered yet. So.
Nintendo, and I.
New 8-bit heroes. It started as a movie, and yes, tell us more about it.
Yeah, correct.
So here we'll do a little edit. We'll drop this all in. Yeah, it seems to be fine. Yeah, my edits are not all that complicated either, so. I would bet you that YouTube is onto some of that stuff, but yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of viral videos that were made viral by cheating. I'm positive of that. That's why they're so tight-lipped about everything.
Pretty soon.
But I mean, this feels very
More
very quick to me.
Some less than common things that you can.
Yeah, this is a 4K 60 project. Now, what I could try to do, let's go pick out, I don't want to mess this thing up. Let me make a copy of the, I already uploaded the video, but just in case I see something I want to change, I'm going to make a test here. So what I'm going to do is apply like a filter to this and see how long it takes for it to render, if it can render. So we'll go over here. And let's see what we got for, it's like kind of a basic. Here, we'll just drop this little filter in. It'll make it look like a security camera. And
retro products we run into with this show, and this one I thought was pretty
keeping up.
This is called the Build-Decade, and this is a.
And I'm running in full. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm running in the full. Oh, let me go quality. So learn
a lot. I've learned a lot from him, and I'm still learning. So check him out at EPOS Box on YouTube. Now, there's always some cool retro products
keeping
we
up.
run into with the pile of them before they started running.
So this is a filter that is being rendered right now in real time, 4K 60.
Also, these are optional. They have different control modules.
It's probably dropping a frame here or there, but I mean for editing purposes.
A lot of this. So you can,
that's great.
Now, one of the fun things about coming to look like, they were such an afterthought back in the day. You get your.
Gosh, this is great.
Birthday gift or your Christmas gift, you opened it up, you tossed it out, and so
Yeah, seems to be working pretty good. Hey, CT Blogger is here. So I will try that out. I think I have it on Game Pass now. I'll have to try that out there and see what we can figure out. CT Blogger and I go way back. We were like the original independent media around here in Connecticut. 8K YouTube look on the M2. That's a good question. I have to install Chromium on here, or the Brave browser. Let's go grab that real quick and see. That's the other thing. On Windows, the ARM Chrome ecosystem is not as far along as it is here on the Mac. So I use the Brave browser, which is, you know, the, I think this is the ARM one it's downloading for me, hopefully. Let's see. It doesn't say which one it downloaded. So I want to make sure I get the ARM version. All downloads. It must be universal now? We'll find out when we install it. Usually it tells you inside of the... Now the question for you, CT bloggers, is do you have an 8K television? Because I lack a display that can run at 8K. Although I suspect we'll all have one soon at some point. All right, so let's go over to the applications folder here. I still haven't got my Mac set up the way I have it on the other one, so I need to get all that dialed in. All right, there we go. And actually, let me look at... Yep, this is the ARM64 version. Perfect. So let's see if we can find an 8K video. Here you go. Unrivaled realism. All right, here it is, 8K. Are we running at 8K? Stats for Nerds? Yes. Here, I'll give you a zoom in here. So we're running the 8K version. Wait for that to focus. There it goes. Yeah, no drop frames out of this. Had 4 when it started, but that was about it. So yeah, it's handling that pretty nicely. I'm really impressed with this thing. I didn't think it was going to be a huge jump over the other one, and it's not as big of a jump as the original M1 was because it was so new and novel. But everything we're throwing at this is like running really nicely. It's like a 25% increase. I think I may not tell my wife that this came in, because if she finds out about it, she's probably going to want this. So yeah, a couple drop frames here and there, but not bad. Pretty good. Yeah, I like the look of it too. I don't know how long it's going to stay this nice looking, given what my MacBook Pro looks like after all the abuse that it's been through. Yeah, when we switch to 8K, we'll get cut off every 15 seconds, right, or 15 minutes. Yeah, right now on the 4K stream, it's every 55 minutes, right? So that's kind of par for the course. And you know what I'll do too, while we're in the Brave browser, let me get rid of all this stuff here, get some things cleared out, because we're kind of back to a cooler state than we were earlier. So let me go and try the browserbench.org test. This one's going to go pretty quick too, I think. Whoa, it's hauling. Yeah, so you run this on that thing we just looked at. It's like you could go get a sandwich and come back. This thing is like cranking. All right, 393. This is the Mac native Brave browser, but I'm plus or minus 25, which that's a pretty big swing. So we're going to try it again. Because what that tells me is that it's not certain as to the result. So I look for a number that's a little less of a variance. Yeah, that's better. So 405, that's pretty darn good. Again, this is a benchmark, so things can be adjusted, if you will, to make things run better. This is the highest score I've ever received on anything. And I have a feeling that these things have been, because like my MacBook Pro 14 scored 275. So now I'm curious. Let me kill my browser on the Pro, and let's see how the Pro does with it. So same test. Let me pull up. I have a feeling that something's been optimized in the ARM build of this browser that makes it run quicker. I have some of my extensions loaded, like the LastPass and stuff, so this might need to be adjusted so we have a real apples to apples here. But that score was pretty darn. Even the score that we had with that uncertainty was still much higher than what we received before. But it's easy to adjust your browser to make it run better on the benchmark, which is always why I like to look at things for real just to see how pages render. Yeah, this is odd that the MacBook Pro would get half that score. Let me try that and run that again. It doesn't seem right to me. But remember, I don't have anything loaded from an extension standpoint on here, so that could be why we're seeing that on this. So I'll have to come back to this and look at it a little bit closer. Yeah, it's still up there. I mean, that did a lot better than my Pro did, so that's why I'm like, something's. Although again, my Pro has a lot of extensions loaded, so I have like the Google Translate, I've got LastPass, all that stuff slows down your browser because there's some pre-processing going on that impacts it. But still, like I'm gonna go with this lower score. This one seems to be more realistic, 384.7, which is still faster than what I get on the MacBook Pro, which is pretty wild. All right, so there you go on that front. Let's try the Windows one just to see what we get there, right? I just can't get over how fast Windows boots up on this. And every pun that you hear me say is never intentional because I'm not that smart. Yeah, this thing's pretty wild. Like I'm pretty impressed with it. The first one was crazy enough, but like this one's like an improvement over it, and there still hasn't yet to be, I think, a suitable alternative. All right, so let's take a look at. Again, this is in Windows now, so we are running the ARM version of Edge in Windows, so on a totally different operating system. It is running slower, as expected. But I'd venture to say it's probably going to run quicker than any of the ARM Windows machines we've looked at. But I have not done any 8K video yet. I do not have 8K equipment here. I'm barely going to 4K at the moment. Yeah, we'll try Safari on it next and see what we get on that. Hang on, everybody. Every 55 minutes, we get dumped. They assure me that they're dealing with this, but it ain't happening. So 253 on Windows, and that is faster than any of the Snapdragon. So the closest score that we got in Windows on this, again, this is a browser test, so this is not the be-all and end-all, but the Lenovo ThinkPad X13S got 101.8 with the HCX Gen 3, and this is getting 253. That's pretty crazy. That is crazy. Okay, so let's quit out of here. And let me go over to Safari, and we'll run the same benchmark on that. All right, so same test now with Safari. Not as quick. There it goes. Now it's hauling. Yeah, I wonder if there's something as part of the CPU architecture that is optimizing some of this JavaScript execution. Jeez. I mean, it's got to be, right? I mean, it's so much faster than like my MacBook Pro. Like, what do? They must have put something in there that. Because remember, what they're doing with these chips is that they are optimizing for things that people do with them. So it's not going to be faster across the board on everything. Like if you were to, Intel, it's just like Intel and AMD, it's just this raw horsepower. So whatever you run will run faster. These M2 and M1s, it's a little different. It's going to be optimized for this task, and that task. And I suspect there's probably some hardware acceleration in there based on some of this JavaScript execution that's resulting in these scores, because this is like crazy fast. I mean, it's not even in the ballpark of what I've ever gotten on any other result. It's crazy. I'm not sure what's going on in there. Yeah, so you're getting about what I see on mine. So yeah, and you got to run it without any extensions loaded. That's the key to the whole thing, because anything that's going to look at what's coming in and processing, it's going to slow you down. But wow. Hey, I got some new followers, by the way. Thor and Ocean on Amazon. So thank you all very much for the follow there. Yeah, so this is pretty good. All right. So I'm going to investigate a few things to try out with this laptop, but I am very pleased with it so far. Like I said, I'm probably not going to tell my wife that I have it, because she's going to want to take it from me and give me back my old one. But she likes the one that she has, so maybe I'll be able to hang on to it. We'll see. But I've got to run because I need to get tonight's video uploaded. And also, I am going to meet up with the family for some dinner in a little bit. And Corey says he's getting 205 to 208 on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. It beats the socks off, yeah, across the board. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's not watching the stream. If she is, I'll be in trouble when I disconnect here. Michael wants to know, when do I think the MacBook Pro 16 with the M2 will launch? I suspect they're going to wait until maybe the winter or the summer, because what they're going to do is probably have a different design for the Pro versions, where they'll have, like what they did with this one, where they double up the cores and add a more powerful GPU. The GPU on my MacBook Pro is still much faster than this thing, but on the CPU side of things, this one is pretty substantial. Is Geekbench? Yeah, let's do Geekbench real quick, and then I gotta run. So we'll do a quick Geekbench, get all our benchmarks done, and we'll go from there. But geez, Windows, huh? Like, Windows installed faster than a Mac update did. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm in trouble no matter what. I'm in trouble just breathing. No, we're a good couple. She's very understanding of all of my quirks and interests. All right, so let's run Geekbench. We can run the compute on this one too, so we'll do the CPU first and see what we get. So here's a question maybe some people can help out here with. SATA Firm S11, what is that? You know, this is the first I've heard of this problem. So I don't know if anybody has some ideas in the forum. Was Kingston of any help on that? It looks like a lot of other Kingston drives fell into that thing, huh? All right, so here is our Geekbench score. And let's go and compare that a little bit. Lon.TV/benchmarks if you want to look at my benchmark spreadsheet. All right, so Apple M1 on the MacBook Air, the first one, had 1735 on the single core. This one is 1887. So not a huge jump there. 8877 on the multi-core. But again, it's a matter of what it's optimized for. So I suspect there are things that will be faster and others that will not be as apparent. This is like a composite of a lot of different functions all at once. And I bet you if we went through this list, we would see areas where the M2 does better versus the M1, perhaps more substantially than the composite score here is. All right, so that is that. And let's do the compute test. Incidentally, the ThinkPad with the Qualcomm was 1120 versus 1887, and 5869 in the multi-core versus 7604. So it's catching up, but it's still nowhere near. I'm sorry, 1887. Yeah, 1887 versus 1120 on the single core. The multi-core 5869 versus 8877. So it's still substantially faster than the current Qualcomm offering, at least on this benchmark. Now, on the compute, which is the GPU, we got a score of 26339. The original M1 was 18,228. So this is not going to be as powerful as my MacBook Pro 14. I wouldn't expect it to be, but it is a nice bump over the prior model with a nicer display, and you know, a little less weight, just slightly less weight. So yeah, sorry to hear about this, Mary. So do you have a backup, hopefully, of it? I'm not sure. It seems like it's like a catastrophic failure of those Kingston drives. I'll have to look into that a little bit deeper. There is some discussion on Tom's Hardware of a oh, so it looks like you can fix it, but you can't restore your data. That sucks. I don't know if they're gaming it so much, because like we're not seeing it on the composite scores, and I think that's what I like about Geekbench is that it's not testing one thing; it's testing a lot of things. But I suspect we might be seeing something going on with the browser bench tests that because it's just so much faster than everything else we've been looking at, more so than it should be. But it's not unusual. I mean, a lot of times, the companies will make things that perform better on benchmarks, which is why I try not to focus too much on benchmarks when I review things. And unfortunately, no, you do not get dual external displays. It's you got to plug in 2 ports to get it. So you do need to, you don't get both out of there. My MacBook Pro 14 does out of 1 port, but this one to a customer, unfortunately. All right. Well, I am going to depart now. And we will be back. I'll have a review of this that I'll be working on next week. So we'll have the review up probably Monday or Tuesday next week. Probably Tuesday. And then we'll do a thing on ARM Windows on the Mac with the M2 with Parallels. That'll be fun. And yeah, we'll go from there. But I think I predict that this is going to be a better Windows experience running in a virtual machine than any of the ARM Windows computers have been to date. So we will definitely come back to that. All right. Yeah, I would say, Mary, is to hang on to it because, yeah, if somebody can figure out a way to get the data off without erasing it, it's a shame that Kingston can't be of more help. That's awful. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm sorry about that, Marius. It is 2.7 pounds, or this is 2.7. The old one was 2.8 pounds. So just maybe less than an ounce, maybe a little over an ounce. But that'll be it. All right. Well, I will catch you all on the next stream, and I will upload this unboxing probably for tomorrow. So there you go. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy your Saturday, and we'll be back again before you know it. Bye-bye.